Hi there, nice to meet you again. Thanks for watching this video. Nice weather today, so I thought it was a good time to make some picture of the flowers and so on. But today I wanted to make a video to show you the parameters I use on my D3S, so you can master and optimize your shooting experience. So let's go and see that inside. So, as you know, this body is able to follow you in many situations. So the good thing is that you can save several parameters depending on what situation you are, and you can switch from one to another without losing time. So that's the first point that we will see, and the other one is that you have so many direct button to access to lots of functions. So we will see that in detail, and let's go. So as you know, it's a professional DSLR with lots of buttons all around, so you can have access to lots of function without going into the menus. So what I propose first is to make a kind of turnaround of the body, so you understand where are the buttons. You have in front two buttons, the pre-visualization of the aperture and what we call the FN button. You have here the selection, the mode selection, if you want to be in manual focus, single focus or continuous focus. This means that when you are in manual focus, you make the focus manually. Of course, if you are in single focus, once you make the autofocus, you will hear a sound, and then it's on. You can move, and the focus is not done in continuous. And the continuous mode is when you want to make the focus on something that is moving, and so you keep the finger pressed on the AF button, and the focus is continuously working to keep the subject in focus. You have two ports here for the flash and the synchronization with a remote. On the top you have the flash, the quality and the bracketing button, and this dial is to select the speed. So if you are on S, it means that it's one shutter after one. You need to release the button each time to take a picture. And then you have the low speed continuous shooting and the high speed continuous shooting that can go up to 9 frames per second. So it's quite a lot. Then you have the quiet, the mirror up, and of course you can wait 12 seconds before the shot is taken. And then we go to the back of the camera, where you have lots of direct access. ISO direct button here, quality image here, white balance, live view. Here, this is very important. It depends on if you want to make the focus on one single point. So it will be very precise if, for instance, you are doing a portrait shooting and you want to grab the focus on the eye and not around. So be careful to select this button here, the lowest one. In the contrary, if you are trying to achieve a focus on a moving subject or something that is not very well defined, then you can be what we call the dynamic area. And here in this dynamic area, we will see that we can select 9, 21 or 51 AF points, and we can even go up to the 3D tracking in this dynamic mode. And then you have the global area, where the camera will select by itself the right AF points. On the left here you have the playback when you want to see the picture that you have taken. If you want to delete it, you press here. And the menu button, the loop button, the zoom button when you are in the preview in the review mode you want to zoom into the picture. You can protect the picture so you cannot delete it with this key, and the OK button, of course, and the info button, which is very important as well. That then it will show you on the screen, on the back screen, the main settings of your camera. So I will zoom in this and look into details into the menu. So here we are. Again, remember, before we go deeper into the menus, all is about taking pictures. And so the idea is not to waste time in the menus when you are shooting, but more concentrate on your process and shorten the process to make better photos. So, depending on the situation, you may want to have more speed, higher speed or not. You may want to have high ISO or not, matrix metering or spot metering, dynamic AF or single AF, continuous 3D tracking or single. So all these several situations can lead to in a normal way, go into the menu and change some settings to go then again to your activity. So the idea is that with the info menu, you can easily change and have access to the one of the four menu that you have, four settings, sorry, that you have already saved. There are two main menus in the body, if I don't consider the other one, in which we will make settings that are very different depending on what we want to achieve. There is the shooting menu, which is the second one, and there is the custom settings menu, which is the third one. So let's go into the shooting menu to start with. The shooting menu is the simplest because you have one very important setting that is the ISO, and the rest is important, but you can set them once and don't change it later. So what I mean is that you have the size, the name of the folder, the name of the file, if you want to shoot in RAW or JPEGs, if you want to compress or not the RAW and the JPEGs and so on. So all these functions, you can set them once and don't come back to these later on. The picture control is about working in JPEG, and it's about the configuration of the JPEG. So by the way, when somebody tells you, yes, this is a JPEG directly out of the camera, so it is not modified, yes, a JPEG is modified. So depending on the settings that you apply on the picture control, you have different kind of JPEGs. That means that starting from the RAW of the camera, you change the nature of the file and you export a JPEG file that is preset, following the preset control here. Color space, Adobe, and so on. So the main thing, well, we are here is about ISO sensitivity settings. What this function is about, it's about to set the ISO depending on the situation in which you are. That means that if you are, for instance, doing sport photography, it's different than shooting in the night or shooting in the street or making a portrait session, for instance. So depending on that, you need also to link the ISO to the speed of the shutter, because when you are doing sport, you need a high speed. That means, for instance, 1/1000th of the second. And in the contrary, when you are doing a portrait session, maybe 1/250 is enough, and you can synchronize your flash to this speed. So that means that what this body is able to do is, depending on the maximum ISO that you give to him and on the minimum shutter speed you tell him to respect, he will modify the ISO to reach this minimum shutter speed. That's why it's very important, and that's why in my case I have 4 preset configuration, which are sport, 1/1000th of the second at 12,800 ISO. I have night shooting, I am at 1 on 125 second and 12,800 ISO. And then I have the street photography, and then I have the portrait photography. On the portrait photography, if I go in this menu, you will see that in my ISO sensitivity, I have unactivated this function because in the portrait session, I want 200 ISO. I don't want to raise the ISO because I master the light. And so I am able to shoot at 200 of a second and don't raise the ISO. That's the point. So for this shooting menu, I think it's the main thing to know. And once you have saved your different settings, you easily access to them pressing twice on the info button. And then you are in the shooting and you select the shooting that you want. And so if you are in sport, you go quickly here and then you know that you are with ISO, maximum ISO 12,800 and minimum shutter speed 1/1000th of a second. For instance, in my case, you just change the situation and you are in the situation of street photography. In this case, I have maximum ISO, which is 6,400, and shutter speed is 1 on 250 seconds, and so on. So that's the shooting menu. Let's go now to the other one, which is the custom menu settings. So let's go into the custom settings menu and see what we can do there. There are two main things that you can do. It's about applying function to buttons, so you will be able to apply specific function to some of the buttons of the camera. And the second topic is about how the camera behaves depending on the situations. So let's go into the function. Function is controls. It's in the F submenu. And in this menu, you will be able to change some settings for the buttons. The first thing is to be able to navigate into the menu with the dials. To do that, you go into the custom command dials, and in this submenu, you click on the menu and playback on. This allows you to navigate. You see, with the front dial, you go from right to left, and with the back dial, you can go up and down. This is very fast, in the contrary of doing this and pressing several times to select the menu. You do that with the dials, and that's perfect. Another one is the Multi-Selector center button. This is important because it's the F1 function. This gives you the behavior of the camera when you press the center button here, depending on if you are in a shooting mode, in playback mode, or in live view. In shooting mode, it's important to put it as reset. That means that when you are in a shooting mode and that you have moved your AF point somewhere around the frame, just by clicking here, you put back the AF selector in the center. So that's very fast to do. You have changed the position of the AF button, the AF sensor, you click and you are in the middle. So that's the second one. Another one in the menu, in the controls, another one that is important is the release button. What does it mean? It means that when it's this one, the F9, you know, when you want to select a function, let's say ISO, normally you have to press ISO, keep the finger on the button, and then change the value of the ISO, and then release the button. When you go into the control F9, release button to use dial, you say yes. That means that to change the ISO or whatever, you just press once, change the parameter, and press again if you have finished. Or you press once, change the parameter, and activate the F button, and you go out of the function. So that's important also to know and to shorten your process. Then what is important to me is if you go into the autofocus, is that you select A5, which is AF activation, to off. That means that this button, the AF button, doesn't make the autofocus. It's only the release, the shutter button, and not the autofocus. So you make the autofocus with the AF on button here at the back, and you take the picture with the front button here only. So this is very interesting because it allows you, if you are in a session where the subject doesn't move, or if you have a big depth of field because you are on, let's say, in the street, you take a 28mm or 35, you are f8, f11, and you select your AF distance, and then you just have to press and take pictures without redoing each time the autofocus. And if you want to grab something that has moved or whatever, clack, you press the back button, and in this case, pressing the back button, you will activate the autofocus, and you will be able then, once you have activated, to take the picture. Otherwise, if you don't want to redo each time the autofocus, you just have to take the picture, and the distance is always set. It's like if you were in a manual focus, and sometimes you can activate the autofocus just pushing the back button here. So that's another very interesting function that I love to set on this camera. Another one is the AE-AF lock button. This one, you go into the controls, and it's the F6. You go inside, and on this button, I want to apply the exposure lock on hold. That means that if you are doing landscapes, for instance, and you don't want the exposition of that the camera will do, you don't want it to change, the fact is that you just press this button and it will lock the exposition. You don't need to keep the finger on, and then you will make several pictures always with the same exposition without the risk of changing the speed or the ISO or whatever. It's always the same exposition, and then when you will make your panorama, you will have all the pictures that have a continuous exposition in this panoramic assembly, for instance, but it can also help you in other situations. Another very important button is this one, the FN button. I will use it to fix a spot metering for the exposition. I will explain. This one here is the matrix metering, or average central, or spot metering. I leave it on matrix metering, which is very efficient on the Nikon. That means that it measures an average exposition of the total scene, and the exposition is set with this information. But if you are in a situation where the subject is in a high contrast situation, it can lead to an overexposed or underexposed photography. So to change that, a solution is to go into spot metering, and then it will make the measure of the exposition on the active focus point. But instead of going here and change this button with the risk to forget that you have changed it in the next picture, I apply to this button the fact that I am on spot metering. And how I do that, I go into the menu again, into control, and I go into the assign FN button, it's the F4, and in this case, FN button press, I use spot metering. Okay. That means that if I make an example, if I take the picture of the camera here, which one I am making the video, here I am on a matrix metering, I take the picture, and now I press here, and I am on spot measuring. And you will see the difference directly on the screen. Here it's matrix metering, and if you see, the subject is underexposed. we don't see anything because there is a lot of light behind. And as there is a lot of light, the global measure of the exposition leads to this exposition with this speed and this aperture and this ISO. In the contrary, when I have pushed the button to have a spot metering, I have my main subject, which is correctly exposed, and okay, the background is completely overexposed, but the main subject is correctly exposed. So this is a very fast way to switch from matrix metering to spot metering for the exposition using the FN button here. So you are here, you are just looking at the viewfinder, and you just press this button here with your finger, and you switch from matrix to spot metering. Then the other button is the FV button here, and for this one I don't change the settings because it's about giving you the aperture pre-visualization. So I will show you if I am in front of you and I am at let's say F5, you will see that it closes the aperture diaphragm. So when I am here at looking in my viewfinder, I can see the depth of field, and then I can change my aperture and see what will be the result in with this button. So it's very powerful. For this FN button, I have two settings. That's why here in the menu I have portrait, or for instance, if I am on AF continuous 3D, in this case, this button is going to give me the dynamic AF area selection. That means that pressing this button, I will be able to switch from 9, 21, 51 or 3D tracking. Let me show you on the back screen here. When I press the FN button, I switch from AF 3D to 51, 21, 9 area. You can see it changing, and now I am in 3D. So this is working when you are on continuous shooting here, and when you are on dynamic here. If you are not on dynamic, it will not change anything because in this position it's only one AF that is selected. But if you are in dynamic and continuous shooting here, then pressing this button, I have set this function, I will switch from and select the number of focus point up to the 3D tracking in case of animal shooting or sport shooting. So that's why in the menu I have, for the custom settings, two settings here that will use the FN button to do that when I am following a subject in sport or animal, nature and so on. And for the street and portrait photography, I will use the FN button for the spot measuring. Okay, so that's it for the command. Now we will see in the next session the behavior of the camera. So let's talk about now the behavior of the camera depending on some situation. The main situation is, let's say the main parameter is about autofocus, how it behaves. You have two possibilities in AF continuous or AF single. You can tell him if you want the priority to focus or the priority to the release button. That means that if you select focus, you will be able to take the picture only if the focus is made. And if you have a moving subject and you want to grab this subject and it is not in focus, you will press the release button, it will not work because it is not in focus. So it will give the priority to the focus or the release button. The same in case of AF single. AF single, you for instance, in AF continue, you may want to take the picture anyhow, if the focus is or not. You take the picture, you will see later if it's okay. But if in the AF single priority, you want to take the picture only if you are sure that the focus is made. So it's better to select focus in this case. The dynamic AF area, as I told you, this is, I will access to this using the FN button. So I don't care going into the menu to change this. The focus tracking, sorry, this is important. It's how the camera behaves when the subject that you are tracking in continuous focus, if there is something that passes between the lens and the subject, either the autofocus waits before it will try to grab this new subject, or it will jump directly to this new subject. So this is very important, and you can see that in my presets, I have AF continuous 3D locks long, which means I am on the settings number 5, value 5. It will wait before trying to set the focus on the new subject. And I have another one, or in the contrary, I have a short lead times before he switched to from subject. So depending on the situation, if here I am somewhere where I have a lot of things that moves and my subject is moving very fast, and I want to be sure that I grab the one that is in front of the focus, I will select this option. Or in the contrary, if I don't want my autofocus to change too fast, I will select the first one. So this is about focus. Focus AF activation, I told it already, point elimination, and to me that's all. The other one is about the AF point selection. If ever you want 11 or 51 point to be selected, and this can shorten your process again because it's all about this. If you have 51 point as selection, AF selection, that means that to select the AF here, you will need a lot of pressure of this button here. So it's not very efficient. So to change that, you go and select 11 points. In the case of, for instance, sport or street photography or something where you don't need to be very precise, because you still can readjust a little bit the framing. So I didn't apply maybe the setting. Let me see. Yes, I have 11 and I am in here. And let me see. I was in 3D. Okay. So normally, now I have only 11 points. So you can see it's shorter to go from one to the other side of the frame. So for instance, you want to take the up and right here, and then you can just recompose your frame and you take the picture. It's always to shorten the process and make it easy and faster to select the AF button, the AF sensor. So that's one important button, and in this case I have decided here that when I am on continuous, I only use 11 points, and when I am in street or portraits, for instance, portraits, I want to be very precise, so you will see that I have 51 button point selection, sorry, AF point selection, because I want to be precise and I don't want to reframe after selecting the AF point selection. So that was about this feature. AF on, like I said, it's you press here to activate the autofocus, and that's it. After that, the rest. Yes, this can save you a little time, and I have used it depending on the situation as well. It's about the way the step of the value when you change the ISO and the exposition. When I am on the sport or let's say a sport or a moving subject, in this case, you see that I have put the ISO sensitivity value at 1, exposure and compensation at 1 as well. That means that one step, each time I turn the wheel for the ISO or for the exposition, I move one aperture, one step, because I want to go fast in the changing of this parameter, again when I am in a sport situation or action situation. In the contrary, when I am in a portrait session or a street session, in this case I want to be precise in my settings, and you see that I move from 1/3 of step of ISO and so on. So I want to be precise in portrait. I have time, so I use 51 points, and I use this 1/3 step instead of one full step when I am in portrait. And in the contrary, in active situation, I want to be fast. So that's the way you can parameter this wonderful machine and define some settings that will help you be more efficient depending on the situation, because the D3S again is able to follow you in many situations, and that's the point. That was the point of this presentation today. So I hope that you have liked this video. Don't forget to put any comments on this D3S and on the settings, what you think about it, what maybe you have other settings that you like. And if you have any questions about how to parameter this superb Nikon D3S that is still very powerful, still in 2020, don't hesitate to ask me. Thank you for watching. Thanks again. I want also to thank you, because every day I see that I have some new followers of my channel, so this is very pleasant. I like it. Thank you so much, and I will hope to make a video more often. Sorry for the lead time and the delay for this one. I was very busy with my job, but now I will try to make more often videos. Thank you for watching again, and see you soon. Goodbye.